Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I've got Logan with me. Logan, how are you doing?
Doing great, Jamie. Enjoying some nice hot lemonade with honey, trying to warm up during this cold weather. How about you?
Uh, Nice cup of tea here. Red hot. Actually, we've got two because it's going to be a long show. But yeah, outside of the cold, it's been an interesting week for news because last week, as everyone knows, the world was falling. Everyone was panicking over rumors, and then we had the Xbox Direct, which was really good, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But it's been a weird week for the gaming news because normally January um is kind of like non-existent when it comes to game news. We maybe get one or two big stories, but so far, and January isn't even over yet. It's kind of nuts. But before we get into all the topics, have you been playing anything interesting the past week, Logan?
Well, I don't know if you've heard of it, but I've been playing this new little anime critter game that's out called Palworld, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. How about you, man?
Lots of RoboCop. I've been rotating between that and Avatar. Avatar, I put it this way, I'm going to be playing that game for months and months and months because it's a big game. RoboCop, I'm almost done with it. I'm pretty sure I'm right near the end of the game, like right next to the end of the game. And I have played some Palworld. I have enjoyed my time with it. We'll be talking about Palworld in a bit, but yeah, gaming's been good, man. There's so many good releases coming out soon, and which we'll talk about. But like, good time to be a gamer. So many good games out now. So many coming out. The sales on Xbox Live right now are really good. It's a good time to be a gamer. I will say this though about RoboCop. The new game plus is out now, which I highly recommend people check out. It is an authentic RoboCop game. It's we live in a world where artistic licensing is a thing, and sometimes creators and developers they don't really stick to the source material a lot of the time. And when it comes to things like that, people just don't like it. People want things to stay how they are. Like the Witcher TV series is nothing like the books or the video games. And Henry Cavill's leaving because of that. And when it comes to RoboCop, they could have done this game so badly. They could have really messed it up. And it is pure RoboCop. It is basically the real RoboCop 3, which I love. And like Logan, I know you said you weren't really a big RoboCop fan or you really watched them, like, but as someone that isn't a RoboCop fan, what's your take on the game?
Oh, I loved it. I forgot to mention I actually just beat it before I started playing Palworld. And New Game Plus is perfect timing for it for me. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, as someone who had very bare minimum knowledge of what RoboCop was heading in, like, I knew it was over the top, gory, 80s camp. Cop was killed but resurrected, and hybrid machine thing, and then a whole bunch of dark humor and like a retro futuristic Detroit. Like that's what I knew. Like, I didn't really know much about characters or other stuff or the whole world, but going in it was with a clean slate. It was a lot of fun. The gunplay was pristine. Like, every gun felt unique and different, from like all the different types of shotguns you could get to the pistols, to like you could upgrade your pistol so many different like key card um, chips and things that had different trees, and like your choices mattered, and like you make this decision, this character may be down the road to help you, or this character is splat on the ground from being chucked off a roof. Like, it depends what you do. And the story was heartwarming and good, and it was funny and also heavy at the same time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Visually, it was truly impressive. Like, it reminded me of Black. You remember that game from the OG
Yeah,
Xbox PS2?
yeah, that was incredible.
Like, how it was just like this otherworldly gunplay experience and good narrative, and just every gun felt different and powerful. and like, wow, like this is combat right here. Like this game felt like that to me in a cyborg setting, to where you're this walking fridge essentially that can't turn worth a flip and can't jump, but it also didn't make you feel like Superman. Like you could get overwhelmed and destroyed if you. This was not a game you could get cocky with. Like
No.
you couldn't just go in there and like, I am RoboCop. I'm gonna just nuke these 30 dudes out of existence. Like no, you have to use your brain a little bit, even though you're a walking tank. So all in all, definitely recommend, even for people who aren't the biggest RoboCop guys.
Yeah, when it came to RoboCop, like before it came out, I thought like it has a way bigger production value than Terminator Resistance, and that was one of the things I said in my Terminator Resistance review, is that you can tell the developers are passionate about Terminator, but the game was held back by its budget. And now with this, they have a different publisher. It's Nacon, who actually, actually give a damn about publishing their games. It's clear that RoboCop cost a lot more to make. That game was made in 3 years, which is mind blowing to me.
That's wild.
Yeah, and like you look at other games out now, like they can be gorgeous games filled with like lots of detail and stuff, but like there's times I was looking at the ground in like a factory in RoboCop, thinking, "Oh look, there's like 3D rubble on the ground where you could see like through cracks in the floor," and like that isn't really something you see much. And granted, the character models aren't as good as the environment.
That is true. The eyes kind of get a
Yeah,
little dead looking.
but like I look past it because the game has so much charm to it, and as a RoboCop fan, it is spot on. Peter Weathers back for. Peter Weller's back as RoboCop. Murphy. It's just spot on. It's really good. Like you said, the gunplay is great. All the guns feel unique, like you said. The different shotguns feel different, which I like, because sometimes I feel like in first person shooters that aren't Call of Duty or Battlefield, a lot of the weapons can feel the same, which I've always hated. But in this game, all of them feel different. So I love that game. I hope they come out with a sequel. I will say this though, I think they should stick to making licensed games, because they clearly know what they're doing. If they want to make a RoboCop 2 video game, I'm for it. I think they have a bright future ahead of them, because their Xbox 360 game, the Rambo game, was a meme. It got dunked on. It was a on-rail shooter. Nobody liked it. It was a joke, and they didn't really put out anything until Terminator. And like when they put out that game, I was like, they have something special here. And yeah, I really hope they come out with like maybe a Dread game or Die Hard. I mean, you could basically take anything from the 80s or 90s and they'll make something good with it. But yeah, RoboCop, people play it. It's brilliant, and it's arguably one of the best looking games this generation. Anyway, let's get into all the topics, because we have a lot to go over. Now, I may have mentioned this last year, I was to say last week. I can't speak at the minute. It's so cold, by the way. It's absolutely freezing. Top Spin's coming back. Now, I know it's a tennis game, but a lot of people love that franchise. 2K is bringing it back. I just hope 2K doesn't do what 2K does and fill it with microtransactions and all that stuff. But personally, I used to love playing Top Spin. Logan, what's your thoughts on this? Because I know Top Spin isn't exactly the most, interesting topic, but personally, I used to like playing tennis games. They can be fun.
Yeah, I personally I was really stoked to hear about it. Like I remember playing I think it was Top Spin 3, or maybe I can't remember, the one that launched on OG Xbox. Like I had the disc of that and something else. And it was a lot of fun, tons of customization, and just as someone who wasn't a big tennis fan but enjoys the games, the gameplay was really fluid. Upgrade your skills, your campaign tree, go around to these different events. Like they could totally flesh it out with a story and all kinds of stuff. But like you said, it being 2K, I do have some concerns about the how in depth in the weeds they want to get with microtransactions. Because like I can totally see like, like they having a whole shop full of like accessories and things for your character, whether it's, little hair clips or pigtails or skirts or sweatbands or headbands or certain sneakers or certain rackets or, watches like, oh, we have a Rolex collab or, this or that. Like they could totally go really, really in depth with that. So that'll be something to watch, but I'm just glad it's coming back, honestly.
Yeah, the only reason I'm a bit worried because 2K, like from what I've seen, their basketball game has gambling mechanics, pachinko in a
Mm-hmm.
basketball game, but which blows my mind. Like how is that a thing? But that's where we,
It's brutal.
yeah, that's where we live now in the gaming world. They can put pachinko in a sports game, and it's popular. People spend money on that stuff. By the way, if you listen to this podcast, please do not spend your money on that stuff. I know it's your money, but really, do you really need to level up that quick? I don't think so. I'll put it like this: I've been playing games with microtransactions since 2012. I have yet to buy a single one. It's a business practice I do not support. I'm just not spending, and plus, I don't see the value in microtransactions. Um, and also, by the way, a little bit of a tangent. I think battle passes in full price games are the dumbest thing ever. So, Call of Duty, it's a full price game. It has a battle pass. Why? Why do I have to pay to unlock weapons and attachments? Didn't I buy the disc? I get it in free to play games. It completely makes sense. Fortnite, that makes sense. Fall Guys, I think they have the best way of doing a battle pass because you can actually earn currency to buy the next battle pass in Fall Guys. I don't know how it works with Halo, but and that is a free to play game when it comes to multiplayer. But when it comes to battle passes and premium games, I think it's the dumbest thing ever. Logan, I know you don't really play Call of Duty much, but have you seen how you unlock weapons in modern Call of Duty games?
This is probably going to date me a bit, but I honestly haven't been into the competitive Call of Duty scene in quite some time. Like, I think Black Ops maybe might have been like the last time I like truly was into the hardcore multiplayer. But like from afar, some of the stuff I've seen is like night and day from what we used to play. So it doesn't surprise me to hear that they've kind of gone off rails a bit.
I'll use Black Ops as an example since that's the last one you played, and that was the last time I was like properly into Call of Duty multiplayer. Like, let's say you wanted, I'll just say the AK-47. It would say like get 20 kills, and then if you wanted the X attachment or like the Hollow Knight scope or whatever, you'd have to get 40 kills, and then with that scope, get like 10 kills or something like that. The battle pass for modern Call of Duty games locks guns and attachments, and it's all over the place. Like, one of my mates that I play Call of Duty with, he tried to explain to me how unlocking weapons works, and I wasn't taking it in. It just made no sense to me, and I don't know. I just think battle passes in premium games, it just doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. And while we at the beginning of the show, we'll get the only negative topic out of the way, and that's Riot Games. They make the League of Legends games, Valorant, all that stuff, and they are huge games on PC. I know League of Legends is coming to console at some point this year, but either way, Riot Games, they make some of the biggest games in the industry, and it turns out they've just laid off over 500 people. It's a brutal time in the game industry where, I mean, in the past few months alone, I think I've seen at least 3,000 people get laid off in the gaming space, and that's not including Twitch staff. It's crazy what's going on, and what's really upsetting is a lot of these publishers are having like record-breaking numbers when it comes to profits. Fortunately for the developers at Riot Games, they do have a really good severance package, which includes healthcare, pay for a lot of time, a free computer, all that stuff. But it's crazy that we live in this world where all these publishers, or I should say most of these publishers, are making a ridiculous amount of money, and they're laying off people when literally records are breaking when it comes to profits. It blows my mind. And the thing is, I've been interested in playing some of Riot Games titles on Xbox whenever they come over. Like, I'm interested in playing Valorant and League of Legends when they come over, but I just don't like where the industry's heading. Like, the layoffs don't make any sense. Again, making profits, and you have these CEOs making like 50 million with a bonus and not doing anything for the staff. I don't know. Like Logan, it's been a brutal 3 months.
Yeah, like the past 3 months alone have been just like a massacre of like job layoffs. It's been truly insane. It's like if you go back to like a whole year, it is just astronomical the count of people getting laid off, let go, fired, terminated, whatever term they want to throw out there, forced to retire. Um and it's just insane, and like our Embracer is apparently potentially at it again with Piranha Bytes is apparently near the headsman's block right now. Like they're not gone, but they're not doing so hot right now, and they're kind of looking over their shoulder, according to reports and something they even put out, like saying like, "Hey, we're still alive, but yeah, I don't know." So it the whole thing just sucks. And like you said, like I understand why some execs get paid the big bucks because they bring a ton of value to a company. They've worked their way up and stuff. And like they run an empire for a reason and they're getting paid handsomely for a reason. But there are definitely some that are just, clock in, collect my fat check and leave types. And it's just it's disheartening.
Yeah. I think. By the way, Logan, is there a vacuum cleaner going on in the background?
Oh, sorry, in the other room. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
close the door.
Okay, it's alright. Anyway, yeah, hopefully things will calm down. I see Kirby voting try to chat. I can't speak today, by the way. The cold affects me in weird ways. Writers, artists, and Riot Forge. I mean, the whole writers thing being laid off from multiple companies is you kind of say this and think, oh, it's all AI. Like these companies, they want to make more money by laying off staff and then applying AI. But I will say this: over the next few years, we will see a lot of more developers use AI for writing, and there will be pushback against it. Not because it's AI, not because it's just taking away jobs, which is a big deal. It's because you can tell. Like I mess around with AI just for fun, um, and the writing can be like cool, but you can tell a robot wrote it. There's no heart there. There's no
Hmm.
imagination, and like obviously, people listening, I kind of like Mass Effect, and I just thought, wouldn't it be cool to ask Bing to come up with a song about Mass Effect in the style of Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and it did that. And I thought, wow, that's actually really cool. But again, the way it was wrote, you could tell it was a robot. And I think AI is an amazing tool, right? I think there's people at game companies right now, they're losing it because they don't really see it as a tool specifically. They see it as a thing that's going to take away the jobs. I don't really see it that way. Like there's a YouTube channel called Corridor Digital where they make animations and fan made movies and stuff. They do really good CG projects. Like they used AI to make their own anime about rock paper scissors, right? And it's really good. And people were losing their minds saying this is going to take away jobs from anime artists. And it's like, no, Corridor Digital were never going to hire staff to make an anime series. They're just using a tool. And like I use AI tools for AI upscaling. That's basically what I use it for. And on my entire channel, I think I have two thumbnails for two podcasts where I use an AI generated image. But again, with those images, you can tell people's hands have five thumbs. It makes no sense. People will always be able to tell. And as we'll be talking about Palworld in a bit, there's an extreme overreaction to it. I think that if companies are legitimately looking at trying to replace their staff with AI, it's not going to work in the long term. People will not like Ubisoft. I think they pretty much going to be the first major publisher that use AI in a lot of big projects because their big open world games are massive. and they need lots of dialogue and writing for their like open world games like Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs and all that stuff. People will push back on those because the writing will be terrible. It will sound like it's spoken by a robot, and yeah. I think in like 3 years' time, even though the technology will be better, less companies will be using it because, again, the writing just isn't that good. If you go back and look at the movie industry from like 2010 or whatever, 2009, when the writers' strike happened in Hollywood, the first one, like you can tell there's a bunch of films and TV shows that came out at that time that are just awful. Prison Break season 4, absolute trash fire, and I'm pretty much one of the biggest Prison Break fans on the planet. Prison Break season 4, you can tell they just had some random dude off the street writing it. It's awful, absolutely awful. Battlestar Galactica season 4, terrible, absolutely terrible. What else? Oh yeah, the second Transformers film, Revenge of the Fallen. It's a film I enjoy, but the writing is dog crap, absolutely dog crap, because they had just someone that was behind the camera writing it, and people will always be able to tell. But yeah, I don't think AI is going to be the thing that fixes all these companies' issues. And we'll be talking about game budgets in a bit because, Sony wants to raise the price to 80, 2K wants to raise the price to 80. I know for a fact, especially Rockstar, they will want to raise their price to 80. And we already have publishers that have $80 games on Xbox Live. It's Ni no Kuni 2. That's $80. What the hell? Or at least it's £80, which is still even more. But yeah, the whole using AI to replace workers just isn't going to work. And while we're on the whole workers thing, Focus Entertainment, my favorite third-party publisher, they are rebranding their entire company to Pull Up Entertainment. Now, I've read the press release, and it sounds like their games are still going to be labeled Focus Entertainment. But I think Pull Up Entertainment is just a terrible name. If people want single-player games that have no microtransactions, any of that stuff, look at Focus Entertainment and their titles. I'm not even kidding. They make some of the most interesting single-player games. Like Logan, obviously you've played a bunch of their games before. They down like 41% when it comes to profits. They did say they're not going to let anyone go, which is really good. But what's your thought on them changing to Pull Up Entertainment of all things?
Well, as a basketball fan, first thought is that would be a great name for a basketball related entertainment entity because a pull up jumper is a shot you take in basketball. So the idea of that related to gaming is kind of just odd and doesn't really make sense unless it was like a NBA 2K or something like that. But yeah, like I'm just glad they're still going and they're not laying people off. I love their games. They and Modus and Nacon and some of these other smaller publishers have become some of my favorites out there. Like they've been making consistently great games that fit that, size threshold of a certain kind of hours put in and like just a really good tied with a bow, neat ending, gameplay experience, narrative, etc. on a good price. Like I just really like their games and I want to see them stay afloat and I really hope that they keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. It's just I like that. That's one of the weird situations with that publisher because they don't own a bunch of studios. They find interesting games and publish them and put money into marketing. Like this year, they coming out with Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. That could be one of the biggest games of the year. I just hope they market it correctly because that's a single player, third person shooter campaign. It does have up to 3-player co op for the story. But like outside of that, as far as I know, there's no multiplayer in the game or any of that. So like they are strictly like single player. They do have a few co-op games, but when it comes to interesting releases like Focus Entertainment, they couldn't consistently put out interesting games. They put out a game like a few years ago. I think it was like a year and a half ago called Hard Space Shipbreaker. I've talked about that game a lot because it's a game where you disassemble starships and salvage them. And it's such an interesting game because we have nothing like it. And It simulates objects moving around in 3D and zero G, and it's like such a very next gen game, but nobody talks about it. Highly recommend people play that. It's also in Game Pass. But yeah, I'm hoping the best for them because they are my favorite publisher. But anyway, we'll move on. We've got a bunch of good stuff to talk about. You know what? Uh, let's get the Palworld stuff out the way because you mentioned it earlier in the show. You've been playing Palworld. Palworld is it's a Pokemon style game where you go around, you capture these creatures, and you can use guns. And but bear in mind, this game was announced, I think, 2 years ago. I've been talking about it on Twitter for over a year. That was before it was announced for Game Pass. That's before it was announced that it was only going to be on Xbox at launch or anything. Like, I was excited for this game because I grew up with Pokemon as a kid. Right? The anime, Red, Gold, whatever, Ruby. I stopped at Ruby because I never got a DS. But I was a huge Pokemon fan as a kid. And anyway, I'll continue with that bit in a minute. But Palworld is absolutely massive now. It launched in Game Pass and PC Game Pass. People love it. They've now have over 6 million. I think it said 6 million copies sold or 6 million players. Either way, it's taken the world by storm, and it's only been out 4 days. So you'd think like all these developers around the world would be celebrating the success of an indie team making absolute bank on a game, and sadly not. There's developers tearing this game apart. There's this active community on Twitter that want to get this game not just cancelled, but they want Nintendo to sue, which is crazy. And I feel like developers should be celebrating this game because we see time and time again these successes happen, but developers seem triggered. Like, Logan, can you remember when Elden Ring released and it was taking the world by storm, and literally everyone only talked about Elden Ring for like 3 months online? Developers from Ubisoft and a few of Sony studios were like trashing the game. Can you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that vividly. I remember in particular some prominent folks from Gorilla were pretty pretty miffed and peeved that Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West was getting overshadowed by Elden Ring, and they kind of were just, it was very much an ego thing and a envy and just kind of like well, how dare you not talk about ours instead, or this, and like, don't you know who I am, kind of vibe about it. And then people are like, you know what, this is new and different, and it's like a dream game of like all these different things just perfectly fitting together in this zeitgeist moment that was impossible to predict or whatever. And Palworld is basically doing that. Like, yes, there are clear inspirations from some other things. Like, you would have to be blind to not notice that. Like, the other day, I've been playing it pretty religiously since it came out. And, like, the other day, I noticed, like, this reminds me exactly of Pride Rock from Lion King. And sure enough, like, there's Pride Rock, and then like down in the valley there's the Great Circle, and like there's all this. And then like I've seen some places that are very inspired by Elden Ring, like castles and church looking things and ruins. And you remember those, I can't remember the name, but like the exegals, or like those prison things basically that
Oh
were
yeah.
like these stone circles that glowed, and like you'd go into another realm to, like, I've seen some of those. And then, at the very front, obviously, you have these cute little anime creatures. And some are closer than others to looking like some Pokemon or some Digimon for that matter. But at the end of the day, like, it's not copyright to have something similar. Like, it it's not blatantly stolen. There's not evidence out there that they have, you know, taken files or done this or that or blatantly to a T copied this, and that on characters, gameplay, story, everything. Like, this is a mashup of Ark Survival, like a monster catching RPG, some Elden Ring exploration like scale, some Breath of the Wild type traversal and exploration. Like, it's a whole mishmash of things that on the surface don't sound like they would mix together at all, but they do. And it's super fun. It's darkly comedic at times. And yeah, I'm just absolutely loving it. But to say it's a blatant Nintendo Pokemon, stolen or ripped off or whatever is just, it's not accurate. Like, be honest, how many ways can you anime style a sheep?
Yeah.
Okay? Like, I mean, I'm being honest. Like, Pokemon itself, like, I've played since Red and Blue. Like, I haven't played the most recent one, but I've been a long time Pokemon guy. They eventually got to the point where they were so creatively bankrupt that they're bringing in ice cream cones,
Yeah.
fridges, chandeliers, teapots, haunted swords and shields. Like, okay, like, they broke the bank. Like, they had gone through the animal decks of real world life and were stretched thin and were making things that weren't even animals into Pokemon type things because they were so stretched thin and trying to prop this thing up instead of innovating and doing some other gameplay changes. This thing, yes, it has similarities to it. And yes, there are electric mice or sheep or dogs and wolves or birds and other stuff. But lo and behold, last I checked, no company has a copyright on the animal kingdom and how to creatively represent that. So it's just lazy and dumb, just point blank.
Yeah, before we continue with the topic, which should be interesting, if you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. YouTube is a great product. It's a great website, but sometimes sharing isn't really their best thing. If you want to support the channel with Super Chat, it's all live. Answer anything. If you want anything answered or anything like that. Anyway, so, Palworld. I think you have a good point about the whole Pokemon thing and like Pokemon Red and stuff because they used animals basically. And like you said, no one has a copyright on animals. So it's like, how many different ways can you do a sheep? You're right. Like, how many different ways can you make a snake or a cow Pokemon? Like, and now you're right. There's Pokemon that look like ice cream cones. There's one that looks like a motorcycle. How did that evolve into a motorcycle? And they are scraping the barrel. But when it comes to this, and I don't get like there's these Pokemon fans on YouTube and Twitter right now that are losing their marbles. They feel they're acting like something's being taken away from them. And as you said, Logan, you played Pokemon Red and Blue. I'm sure people listening played the older Pokemon games. I used to play Pokemon as a little kid because I loved it. I loved the anime. I was obsessed with Pokemon as a kid. I have a massive collection of Pokemon cards, bunch of merch from when I was a kid. Like, Pokemon, when I was little and when you were little, like, was the biggest thing on the planet. Like, it wasn't just this huge thing that it is now, and it always has been. But, like, back when we were kids, Pokemon took over the world, and it was massive. And even back then, I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had this big 3D game where you could explore the world with these Pokemon? And then Nintendo came out with Pokemon Stadium, and we saw the Pokemon for the first time in a video game in 3D, and that blew people's
Mind
minds.
blown.
Yeah, it was mind blowing. You popped your game in the little attachment in the controller, and in the second one you could play the game properly on your TV, which was really cool for the time. But like Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 really made people think, okay, we want to see these in a new game. And then when the GameCube came along, did we get that game? No. We got more sort of like action adventure style games and like puzzle games, but we never got that big 3D jump. And Pokemon pretty much stayed on handheld. Then the DS came along, and then Pokemon kind of got 3D-ish, but it was pixelated AF. And honestly, I think that generation of Pokemon games look really bad. They haven't aged really well. And then with the 3DS, same thing. Character models look better, but pretty much the same games. And with the Switch, people saw Breath of the Wild in 2016 and thought, wow, are we going to get a Pokemon game like that? And it never happened. There's still never been a big 3D Pokemon game like that. So you have these adults that have always wanted that 3D Pokemon game, that big, massive 3D Pokemon game. And even though I haven't played a Pokemon game since Ruby, I've still wanted that. I've always looked at the Pokemon clones. On Xbox right now, you can buy Nexomon, which is very much a Pokemon Gold style game. And Nexomon
Love
Extinction. Yeah, good games, by the way, good games. And by the way, Nexomon 3 is 3D open world. They put out a teaser trailer last year. It looks like they're going to do big things with this game. That is a one-to-one Pokemon clone. But guess what? I'm going to buy the hell out of that game on Xbox the day it's available. And like Nintendo, they have to put out this new Pokemon game every year or every other year. And then now they do expansions. And again, people haven't been satisfied with that next-gen Pokemon experience. And now on Xbox and PC, you have this 3D Pokemon-looking game. And granted, in Pokemon, you don't give Pikachu a Kalashnikov. But in this, you can have these monsters literally carry your resources to storage units. You can have them build for you. I've seen like clips of people making assembly lines of these Pokemon-like creatures making AK-47s. Like, it's wild. And even though it isn't a one-to-one Pokemon game, it's a survival game. It still gives people that, sense of like big 3D Pokemon game, because this is original. It's doing new things for the genre. And look at how many people are playing on Twitch. I think the other day there was like 300,000 people watching things on Twitch for that game. There's almost 2 million people playing concurrently on Steam. Most of my friends list were playing Palworld. It's crazy. Like, this game is massive. And don't get me wrong, whenever I've talked about a Pokemon-style game in the past, I always get a bunch of replies saying, this isn't going to be better than Pokemon. Like, when Temtem, the closest thing to Pokemon, came to Xbox, PC, PlayStation, Switch, basically everything, a lot of the replies to my Temtem posts were, Pokemon's still a better game. Pokemon's still a better game. And I think the way Temtem launched, the way they went about it, they pretty much screwed themselves. They absolutely screwed themselves. The way the combat system works, it's only 2v2s. The promotion of the game is terrible. But if you want a 2v2 Pokemon style game on Xbox, that's actually an MMO. Temtem's been around for about a year now. And nobody really complains anymore because it's not popular. The only reason people are complaining is because Palworld is absolutely bonkers in popularity at the minute. People can't stop playing it. And while people did go into it thinking it's going to be a one-to-one Pokemon game, people are discovering that the crafting mechanics aren't too complicated. It's actually easy to get into. And while the game isn't perfect, by the way, I personally think the game's audio is atrocious. I don't know I don't know how they did the audio. I stopped playing it waiting for today's patch, thinking that like maybe the game's mono and it's projected in a stereo style manner. But there's something weird with the audio in that game. It sounds like someone recorded the audio in a shoebox with a microphone from the 1920s. There's something weird with that audio. Anyway, I tried the patch today with the, I'm doing air quotes, fixed audio, and it still sounds crap. Granted, now there's ambient noise in the background, like little birds chirping away and all that stuff, but like the game has a long way to go. However, it is an early access game. So I think that kind of like gives them some protection in like, the constructive criticism department, because again, it's not perfect, but it isn't game preview. I've played a bunch of game preview games over the years, and I tell you, some of them have performed terrible. Elite Dangerous, when that came to Xbox, absolute garbage in performance. The audio was terrible. Valheim is in game preview. I'm begging for them to put out an update because the game basically hasn't changed. And I've been looking forward to playing Valheim on a console for years now. Um, and the thing is, the game's going to get even popular. It's going to get bigger. People are going to love it, and they're going to come out with a roadmap soon. It's going to be a 1 year roadmap. They have PvP planned. I know that the PC and console release are kind of different in how multiplayer works, but they have said they are going to make them the same game basically. But Logan, like, what's your thought on the whole, like, the state of the game? Because it doesn't sound good. It has performance issues. I keep seeing videos of characters T-pose, and like, it's not a good product in its performance. I'll put it like this: it's not a final product, but as it is right
It
now.
is. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm
Sorry.
saying as it is now. Like, what's your thoughts on the whole product?
Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, having a blast. It is very clearly an early access game. Like, every time I load up the game, my character is like stretched out like a T, like you said, and levitates for a minute or two until the game finishes loading all the textures and the characters. I've had two dungeon raids where my character has taken a step and then gone through the floor of the dungeon. The screen turns black. I'm floating for a minute, and then I load back up at my camp. That's happened a couple times. Um, it's it's laggy. It some of the climbing stuff doesn't make sense. Like, there are times like I can climb a surface, and then there are other times where it's like, you know what? This rock is just like, forget you, man. You can't climb this rock, but all these other rocks around it you can. And like some goofy stuff like that. Like, there's some repetitive stuff. You can tell like they're still learning this and how to do it. But overall, I'm really enjoying it. I I do think there's a ways to go to make it like a pristine product, obviously. Like, I would have more markers and things to help connect like missions and stuff. Like, you have to discover that missions are like from your PAL box, like your Bill's PC equivalent, from for Pokemon people out there. Like, you go to it and it's like, okay, we want you to build these things or catch this many pals. And you do that, and then you can upgrade your base or stuff. And then you have to go out and find these like totems that look like this grass fox thing, like a lift monk or something like that. And you get a bunch of those. You can make an offering to the statue thing, and it'll boost your ability to catch more pals and your abilities. And then like there's chests you can find. It like combines like all the RPG spectrum and crafting and stuff with monster catching and taming, plus a bit of Minecraft like industrialization. It's wild the things you can do in it. But like, if I were to, my big wish for it would be to have a little bit more narrative focus,
Yeah.
like for a final release, like have a story. Like, I, it's not Pokemon, obviously, but because everybody compares it to it, you know the drill with Pokemon. You're a kid, you're 10 years old, 12 years old, depending on game, whatever. You you have a town rival that lives in the house right just down the street on your neighborhood. You have a mentor that works at the Pokemon Center, you or Pokemon Research Lab. You live with your mom. Your dad is not there for some reason. You you go from the small town to becoming beat all the gyms. Complete your Pokédex and beat the Elite Four, and then there you go. Like that, it's not the most in depth narrative, but at least has some structure and narrative. Like, I think a thing Palworld could do would be to really go into lore and build up a really tailored story experience to help differentiate it even more.
Yeah, before we continue, we have first super chats of the day by Nick W. Thank you very much. The first one says by night. Sorry, it's been a long day. For $9.99, he says I would love a huge 3D Pokemon game. Hear me out, right? As you can tell, me and Logan, we don't play Pokemon right now, but you can tell we used to be fans. I would love a big 3D Pokemon game. Do you know what the dream is? I would love to play the first few seasons of the anime, but in a video game. You know,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
yeah, you wake up as Ash Ketchum, you're 10 years old, you get sent out into the world with Pikachu and go on adventures and do different storylines in an RPG. That is the absolute dream. If Nintendo and Game Freak ever do that, I will drop everything to play that game. I will buy the Switch 2 or whatever the hell they want to call it, and I will play that game the second it's available, because that is the dream. Even though I have not played Pokemon since 2005, 4, that is the dream. I would love that. And like, look at this is how much people that are adults like still resonate with Pokemon and still want something. When Ash Ketchum finally became champion, I think it was last year in the anime, and where the season like finally finished and the show finally finished, there were adults crying on camera on YouTube because they grew up with Pokemon. Maybe they didn't watch it for years, but like hundreds and hundreds of episodes later, Ash finally became champion. But yeah, I would love that. I would love a 3D Pokemon game. Hopefully one day. I think if Game Freak maybe take a few years, just don't put out a new product every year. Put one out every few years and then do expansions. But yeah, I would love that as well. And for the second super chat by Nick W for $4.99, thank you very much for the support, by the way. He says, can't wait for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth on Friday. That game's going to be huge. My only problem with Infinite Wealth is, let's call it a skill issue. So if you play the Yakuza games, there's multiple difficulties, right? But in the JRPGs, like a Dragon from 2020, for some reason, when they shifted to turn-based combat, there's no multiple difficulty selection outside of normal and hard. And if you're crap at the game like me, and you don't like difficulty spikes, that game, I'm not even kidding, was absolute torture. And I think Ichiban Kasuga is possibly one of the best protagonists in gaming. Like, if people like turn-based JRPGs that do have the occasional difficulty spike, Yakuza Like a Dragon is amazing. I think it might still be on Game Pass. It was on Game Pass about a year ago or so. But I think I will get it if I can like find some way to play it slightly easier, because I tell you, the difficulty spikes in Like a Dragon made me want to put my head through the wall. Like, absolutely awful. But I know for a fact I'm going to end up getting it at some point. Granted, do I play it with Japanese audio or English? I'm on the fence now for reasons. Logan, do you think you'll be picking that up?
I probably will down the road. It won't be a day one for me though.
Yeah, it looks really good. Plus, it has a mini game that's like Pokemon. It also has a mini game that's like Animal Crossing. Bear in mind, their Pokemon mini game, no one's called it copying Pokemon. Nobody's raged on Twitter. People are just letting it happen. But yeah, thank you very much, Nick W, for that. Man, I just think that the people losing it online over Palworld just need to like relax. Like, if I would take this as an opportunity to tell Nintendo to do a better job. Like, let's look at me, right? I'm obsessed with Mass Effect. If a company comes out tomorrow and says, hey, we're making this game, and it happens to resemble Mass Effect, and it's a third-person shooter that's also a sci-fi RPG, I'm not going to be triggered online. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to do what I do on Twitter. I'm going to make GIFs about it, little videos. I'm going to support that game, because we get clones of games all the time, and nobody complains. But it's when something does well like this, people lose their minds. Call of Duty Modern Warfare came out in 2007, and developers and publishers were like, wait a minute, we can make first-person shooters outside of a World War II setting? So between 2007 and 2011, we had an endless amount of modern setting first-person shooters, and they were all trying to copy what Call of Duty did, and everyone just, they're okay with it. But every so often, a popular game comes along, and nobody copies it. The Mass Effect games. The Elder Scrolls games. Nobody copies those. Who knows? Nobody knows. And you have Pokemon, which is arguably one of the biggest properties on the planet, up there with Star Wars. And people have been wanting Nintendo to put more money into those games, make bigger 3D Pokemon games, and they just haven't done that. And this has given people a taste of that. And it's on Xbox as well. Pokemon prints money. The merchandise, the games, the TV shows. And why can't we have a game that matches the other products? Like the animes, great. Why can't we have a game that looks like that? And they have the technology for it. Look at Hi-Fi Rush. Can you imagine a Pokemon game using the Hi-Fi Rush like tech with the cell shading? Be the best game ever made.
It'd be otherworldly.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe Microsoft can partner with Nintendo so that could happen, because now that I'm thinking about that, I want that. But there's so much potential in a 3D Pokemon RPG, and it's just not happening. But Palworld, it scratches that itch. Granted, it is a survival game, and like you said, Logan, they should put a story in. It does have one. It's bare bones, but as a early product made by a team of developers that haven't really made anything before, it's actually an impressive game. And I think people need to like chill and stop trying to get Nintendo. Like this, I've seen developers from Naughty Dog, and I think I saw Ubisoft today as well, like complaining about this game, saying, "Oh, it's using AI." Who gives a crap, right? Gamers should be caring about one thing: is the game good? Like that's all people want, right? We've had an entire generation, last gen, of broken games. Every game that came out, people would be worried if it was going to be broken. We've had patches the same day as the launch that have been as big as the games themselves. It's 2024. We still get broken games monthly, weekly, daily even. And what, a game's good, people have fun, and now people want to tear it down because it may use AI. Who cares? AI is a tool. It just depends how you use it. And it isn't directly copying one-to-one Pokemon. Like Logan said, how many different ways can you make a colourful anime sheep? I'm guessing not many. You know, look at Digimon. Digimon back in the day, it copied the hell out of Pokemon. But guess what I saw from Pokemon fans back in the day as a kid? People love Digimon as well because people want more of it. Same with Power Rangers. When Power Rangers was at its highest, I was a fan as a little tiny like baby kid, right? And do you know what I did as a little tiny baby kid? I watched I watched Power Rangers clones. I watched VR Troopers, Beetleborgs, and the other one where they're doing like VR stuff. Not VR Troopers, but the other one. But I watched every Power Rangers clone because I was a fan. And if you're a fan of Pokemon, give Palworld a chance. Support us. Or don't support it, but tearing it apart like it is now, it's weird. It's weird. Anyway, Logan, have you got anything else to say on Palworld before we change topic?
One last thing I would say on it is I think that devs and some of these journalists and people who are, shall we say, fervently devoted to Pokemon are going after it is because it's a smaller studio. Like, if this was a big time major studio out there, or had the full armed and operational backing of a major publisher, I think they would be less aggressive with their hate on it.
Yeah, it's very much unnecessary here. Like they should be supporting a positive like story like this. All this team of 10 people made this game that's taken the world by storm. Celebrate it, but it just comes off as jealousy, and it's a way to get clicks. It's like it's a good story. It's people having success, and we want to tear them down. So in the past few months, we've had developers are getting laid off. Terrible story, by the way. Affects people's lives, and now we have a video game that's massively successful, and rather than celebrating it, the industry wants to tear it apart. I think it's stupid. They should do better. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's talk about Final Fantasy. Now, Final Fantasy has been a weird game on Xbox, or I should say a weird franchise, because people have been wanting these games on the platform for a long time, and we have had Final Fantasy games on Xbox. However, they've been cherry picked to hell. The first Final Fantasy game on an Xbox console was Final Fantasy 11 on the 360, which was an MMO. Back in a time when MMOs weren't really popular on consoles. And then we had Final Fantasy 13 in 2010, 9, whenever it launched. That divided the community. People either loved it or hated it. I actually liked Final Fantasy 13, by the way. And then it had its 2 sequels. Because, Square Enix wanted to get the money's worth out of the engine they put millions into. And then we didn't get another Final Fantasy game on Xbox till, I think it was 2014, with Type 0 HD. A game, by the way, that causes people to get motion sick. It's a third-person game, and it made me want to throw my guts up. And we'll be talking about the motion sickness thing in a bit, by the way. So you have this game that was a port of a PSP game. I can't imagine it did well. Again, other people I spoke to, it made them vomit. It was like if you play that game and you happen to get motion sick, that will kick it in. There's no vertical camera movement, so disgusting. Anyway, and then we got Final Fantasy 15 in 2016, I think. Yeah, I think it was 2016. And again, that game was kind of split. People either loved it or hated it. I enjoyed it. I made that game unintentionally difficult for me because I went into the end game at like level 20. Absolute torture, by the way. Chapters 10 onwards for me was torture. But I finished it. And it was I really enjoyed it. I can actually see why people don't like that game. It was nothing like the game that was advertised for years. And then nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then one day, Square Enix was like, hey, you're going to get that Final Fantasy Origins Stranger's Paradise or whatever it's called random day. And yeah, by the way, the DLC in that game, you can only play it if it's on its hardest difficulty. Weird decision. And apparently it's kind of broken at the minute on Xbox consoles. At least if you look at the reviews on the console, that's the state. Anyway, so people gave up hope on Final Fantasy for Xbox because Square Enix, they don't like money. So fast forward to last July or August, when the Final Fantasy 14 event was happening in Tokyo. Phil Spencer walks out on stage and they announce Final Fantasy 14, the MMO, for Xbox consoles, which is a massive deal. It's coming to Xbox this year. There's a beta coming out next month, which is really cool. But at that announcement, Square Enix promised and they committed to bringing more games to Xbox. And ever since, we've heard nothing. Absolutely nothing. And me doing what I do, posting about games I want to come to the console, and I post about games coming to the console. I made a little post about Final Fantasy, and I always use Final Fantasy 7 GIFs, by the way, because that, for some reason, sets people off. Anyway, I posted, like, Square Enix is going to bring more games to the console. Visions of Mana's coming to Xbox as well. And Jez Corden from Windows Central said there are. Like I said, Square Enix have promised. So, and Nick from Xbox Errors also mentioned it. Final Fantasy 16. I'm 99% sure that's going to be on Xbox in the next 5 months. To me, it doesn't seem like it was it was a huge success from what I know, but it wasn't as big as like other games. And I think that's going to be the first major Final Fantasy game that comes to Xbox this year outside of 14. I know fans have been wanting it, and you look at Sega. They've moved over to putting Persona on Xbox. They now put Yakuza on Xbox, and they've seen huge success because of it. And like, if you're a Japanese RPG fan and you're an Xbox fan, you always hear every single week that Japanese Xbox gamers don't buy Japanese games. They don't support them. But we can't buy them if they're not on the console, and the games we have gotten have divided the community. So it's like, we can't win, right? And then the second other publishers start putting games on Xbox, that whole Xbox gamers don't buy Japanese games topic goes away. Nobody mentions it. Logan, the PlayStation exclusivity runs out for Final Fantasy 16, I think, in 2 months or 3 months. Do you think that's coming over this year?
Yeah, I'd say by end of the year. I think as soon as a year passes, like give it a little bit of time as a breather period, kind of like they did for Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop, and then it'll just one day magically appear on Xbox. I think they'll have a press thing or an Xbox wire post and go, you guys have been long waiting for this, yada yada this, and like we're thrilled to bring from our friends at Square, Final Fantasy 16. Like I think it will be happen this year. Yes, 7. I'm still a little hesitant on, but 16, yeah, I do think that one's coming this year. Along with Pixel remasters. It's on a Fire tablet. I know we say it every single episode, but it's on a Fire tablet. Just hit the button, make it happen. Chop chop.
Yeah, the Pixel remaster thing gets brought up a lot because, like, how much it can't cost more than £100 to port that game. It just can't. They're ancient games; they can run on a modern calculator. So, like, why not? And it still blows my mind. They're on Fire tablets. Nobody talks about Fire tablets. You know, I've never seen on Twitter the Fire tablet gaming community saying we want Final Fantasy games. I've never seen that post. And if anyone has, please take a screenshot and send it to me because I want to know if there's a gaming Fire tablet community that port begs JRPGs. Because that'd just be interesting to see. But yeah, I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is the big one. You know, again, it's a household name. People like grew up with the original PlayStation and played Final Fantasy VII, so they want that on the Xbox. And we've talked about this before. And by the way, a lot of gaming media don't like to talk about this, and a lot of fanboys don't like to talk about this. Most Xbox fans started off as PlayStation gamers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just the truth about it. But I hope it happens, and I think Microsoft is in a better place than they were a few years ago when it comes to Square Enix, because Square Enix, they were not willing to do anything. Visions of Mana is coming to Xbox, and it looks like Microsoft actually has marketing for Visions of Mana, which is actually a big deal because that's the first Secret of Mana game to come to an Xbox console. I think, there's a few different ways of people looking at this, where there's some people that say, hey, you have to support Final Fantasy 14 to get more games. And it's like, in retrospect, those MMOs can be looked at as being niche, despite the fact no matter how many millions of people subscribe and play those games, MMOs will always looked at being quote-unquote niche. People that don't play MMOs want to know about what's the single-player game for them. And I think the 7 Remake's the big one. I have not paid any attention to Final Fantasy 16 over the past year. I know absolutely nothing about it, other than the fact that the main voice actor is actually really funny. But other than that, I haven't paid attention to that game. Watched some trailers today. Not going to lie, looks pretty good. And I'll buy it. And bear in mind, I haven't followed that game, and I'm saying I'll buy it. But I think that these third-party games being on Xbox consoles, why does it affect them? Because Final Fantasy fans, they should be wanting this to happen. Instead, they want it to stagnate. Look at Persona. Persona has an active fan base on Xbox now. You couldn't have said that 5 years ago. Yakuza has an active fan base on Xbox now. You couldn't have said that 5 years ago. And Xbox is in a better place now. I think that... Oh, great, we've got fanboys in chat. Say you put Final Fantasy in the title and they come crawling. They're like little cockroaches. Isn't that what that's what they call PlayStation fanboys in Japan, by the way? Cockroaches. They do tend to act like that.
That's interesting. I had not heard that one.
Yeah, it's quite a phrase, but hey, I mean, it's apt. The funny thing is, the people that are always against Final Fantasy coming to Xbox, they will port beg first-party Xbox games, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, but it is weird how, and I'm going to go off into a bit of a tangent in a little bit, but Microsoft, they've been in the gaming space for a long time, actually longer than PlayStation. They were doing Windows gaming back in the day. I think that you have this, subset of fanboys that are unwilling to like Xbox at all. I'm not a PlayStation fan. I'm just not. I prefer Xbox. I used to be a PlayStation fan as a little kid. In fact, when people say PlayStation, the first game I think of is a game called Colony Wars. By the way, that game on the original PlayStation was incredible. It was a 3D space combat game. Had a really cool story. You can't, as far as I know, you can't buy it anymore on anything, not even PC. At least I'm not sure. But that was an incredible game at the time. And then I prefer Xbox now. And like, there's this like weird group of fanboys. They just don't understand that. People change preferences. People grow out of things. I used to be a big Foster's drinker. I now drink Strongbow Original, and that's a cider. I moved from beer to cider. When it comes to cheeses, I used to prefer sharp cheddar. Now it's Cheshire. It's preference. And when it comes to gaming, you have this subset of gamers that just do not understand or want Xbox to be a thing. And all because of Final Fantasy. Like, Final Fantasy just triggers people. And like, what would be so wrong about the fan base getting bigger? Nothing. I see Persona fans with like Xbox in the profile and like that's really cool. But there's this weird group of gatekeepers that probably don't leave the house. They have no maidens. They are the atypical what do you call it? Basement dweller, right? That's what they come off as. Because they don't want people to play these games. And bear in mind, they just de facto to PlayStation just because, we will see things change this year. But if Final Fantasy 16 is announced for Xbox this year, that's good news. That's a third-party game. It should be on it should be on Xbox. It should be on Nintendo Super Switch. Everyone wins. It's just Final Fantasy brings people out and makes them crazy. Hey, Logan, I know you don't get the amount of crazy replies as I do, but you've probably seen the amount of gatekeeping Final Fantasy's made.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, anytime you mention Final Fantasy, in particular coming to Xbox, or any JRPGs, but that franchise in particular, or anything Sony associated, or just hasn't been traditionally associated with Xbox. You get some folks flood in that are not happy about it and tell you about the sales, or they don't support it, or it's not this country's origin, like all kinds of just goofy stuff. And it's like, moths to flame. It's like you turn the porch light on and they just arrive in droves, and they're buzzing and hovering around the post. Like, that's why I always did those moth gifs in your replies for a while whenever you'd post a Final Fantasy thing, because I knew what was happening. And then lo and behold, like, you would end up with dozens of unhinged replies because you posted Cloud or Aerith or Tifa or Barrett or Squall or Came or someone else with an Xbox controller logo or anything, and they just come unhinged. And it's just really funny. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think there's a difference between your first party exclusives and whether you think they should remain exclusive because of an ecosystem thing versus a third party publisher, just randomly keeping things from other platforms for reasons. Like, I think there is a difference.
Yeah, like, if Square Enix was owned by PlayStation, this topic wouldn't even be in the podcast. Like, there'd be no point talking about it. Which is why I think the whole port begging of first-party games makes no sense. But yeah, my prediction, Final Fantasy XIV will be on Xbox by August. And hey, I hope that we'll get a physical copy. I'll buy that too. You know what? We still have a lot to talk about. Let's talk about the Xbox Developer Direct, because we have a lot to go over. So, Logan, the first game we'll talk about is actually, scratch that. Logan, what was your overall thoughts on the show?
I really enjoyed it. It was an A for me, like a good A. It was really well done. They were able to sneak some humor and stuff in there to keep it a little more lively in personality. I love getting to see the devs behind the scenes and like show some personality and like okay, like I know some people don't give a flying flip about it, but to me at least, and I know some others who feel this way, like seeing the people behind the scenes of like a game or a film or a TV show or a sports franchise I support, seeing them behind the scenes and like what they do on a regular day basis or talk about it and show their personalities and like how they how they influence and shape and mold this experience that we all love. Like everybody remembers the dev who loved sandwiches from the Starfield Direct. Like that was a fun, nice touch that added some personality. This one had Todd stealing the golden idol in the background and some other stuff. Like it just was super fun, humorous. I loved all the games that were shown. Was majorly surprised to see Square Enix of all people show up. Wasn't surprised it was Visions of Mana though. And that game looks awesome by the way. Like speaking of anime, animals that there's only so many ways you can make one or whatever. Like I see a big fluffy dog that you can ride around with and swing a sword with. Like I'm in. Okay. So that sounds awesome. And so yeah, just Indiana Jones, Avowed, Hellblade 2, Visions of Mana, and then Aura. Like, great show all around. Hat tip and applause to Tina Amin, who, runs production and videos for Xbox Now, formerly of IGN. She did a brilliant job shaping this. The teams did a great job coming together. And the library is very, very stacked this year.
Yeah, it was a good show. Like for me, when it comes to these shows, be it Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, it's all about pacing. I don't like slow moments, but I like the slight mix between developer talk and full on gameplay. I liked it. It was an A. I think that Microsoft should have these more often. Like Phil Spencer said, they will have more shows so often because they have so many games in development, which is really cool. But I really enjoy it, and we'll get into Hellblade straight away. Actually, no. Let's talk about Visions of Mana. Like you said, it looks good. It looks really good. It's the first Secret of Mana game on Xbox ever. It looks like it's marketed with Xbox. I have seen some people post that it's coming to Game Pass. Um, I think that's just the wording on the website. It says play day one. I think that just means day one on Xbox. Um, and plus it's Square Enix, so I don't know. But I personally don't think it'll be in Game Pass. Would it be cool? Hell yeah. But either way, I'm buying it because personally I think the combat looks good in that game. The colourful characters. It looks I think in a world where everything looks super realistic and gritty, I like the fact that we have these colourful games coming. I think the game looks fantastic. I'm buying day one. That comes out this summer, which is really cool. But yeah, Hellblade. So they showed some Hellblade off, more behind the scenes stuff. The game's 3D audio, that's going to be doing its thing. I think people will really enjoy that game. However, we got a release date, and it was the one that was leaked, May 21st. Honestly, good release date. I can't wait for it. We have had some weird news about that game, and I don't actually think of it as a bad thing. Is that the game's going to be $49.99, and the game isn't getting a physical release. Um, some people are like flipped out with that because we're in a weird spot where some games are getting physical releases, some aren't. Um, I think this cost cutting measure could work. Alan Wake has released its $49.99. They said that they can lower the price like that because it's not getting a physical release. They don't have to publish a physical version. If the all digital future means or games going digital only means cheaper games, I'm 100% for that. I don't think games are worth £70. I even if they're worth that, I think that putting the cost of inflation onto gamers makes no sense. The people's wages haven't gone up to match that. The cost of living has gone up, yet people aren't making more money. So why should we be paying more for games? And then you have HellBlade, which is arguably the best looking game ever made. It's releasing at $49.99 because it's digital only. I do think they should maybe do a separate collector's edition that includes a disc, much like what Baldur's Gate 3 is doing on Xbox and PlayStation in the next month, I think. They should do it that way. Personally, it doesn't really affect me. Logan, what's your thought on the whole digital only thing and the $49.99 price?
I for starters am just in awe of Hellblade. It looks otherworldly, but the whole pricing and the physical versus not physical of it, like, to be blunt, it sucks, but it's just the way it's going right now about the industry. It's more and more digital and ease of access, accessibility. If they can cut prices, that helps. Like, every little bit helps. Like, we always talk about them raising prices to 80, 90, $100. If they can actually do the reverse and cut the price a little bit, that'd be awesome and that should be celebrated. But I get why some people don't like it that a first party major title is not doesn't have a physical copy. I get it. It irked me too at first, but the more I think about it, I'm like, Alan Wake, I bought at a reduced price. Alan Wake 2. And I loved it, and it was one of my co-games of the year with Jedi Survivor. It was an incredible otherworldly experience. Like, I expect this game to be like just downright magnificent. And I think the pricing is good. I actually had some people that didn't think it was worth the price as is. They thought it should be even lower because of when they mentioned about the scale of the game, like how long it would be. And then I had a tweet that kind of blew up about it where I was like, you know what? Frankly, to be honest, I'd rather have an 8-hour game that is just awesome, like just incredible, like narrative gameplay experience, like breadth of scale, like wow, this is gonna stick with me, and pay for that, and it'd be a short 8 to 12 to maybe 20 hours. Then have these, soulless fetch quests that are just like abomination, like this massive, huge open world where it's like, okay, how many times do I have to go kill sewer rats or do this or that or fetch this or, do this just time waster content just so I can progress for a certain thing to happen that they just mandate for reasons that doesn't, like fit in a natural flow or way of things. Like, there are so many games out there that are just bloated monstrosities that, frankly, if they had taken maybe even a third or a fourth of it out, it would have been far better, left a far better taste in your mouth than what it is. That being said, I also love massive giant games as well, like Skyrim, Witcher 3, some of my favorite games of all time. It's a balance. But the idea to say that this game is 8 hours, so there's no way on this green earth you can justify that price. That becomes a, are we solely just devoting a monetary price equals to hours played? Are we gonna have to become gamer math now, where we have an algorithm for this is how many hours I put into a game, so this is how much it's worth, period, across the board? Like, where are we going with this?
Yeah, we've talked about this on the show before, and I think publishers need to follow this. Why should games just be $70 or £70? Like, why can't we have a sliding scale? Like, everything just being set 70 makes no sense. So like the next 2D Sonic game, should that be 70? Because that's what publishers want. Like it makes no sense. And like you said, not all games have to be this 100-hour experience. Like I play a lot of open world games, but do you know what I like to do in between these 100-hour games? I play these linear titles that are shorter. Personally, for me, I think the perfect game length is 30 hours. But there are games I put more into, like Starfield. I put, I think, 133 hours into that, and that was an incredible experience. Could you get that from a 30-hour game? Possibly, but that's just the way Bethesda games are. And like Halo campaigns, what, 8 to 12 hours? Nobody complains. like most traditional first-person shooter campaigns about 8 hours long. Nobody complains. HellBlade is a ridiculously good-looking product, and its price, I think it's fair. And do you know what's funny? You mentioned the Alan Wake price thing. When Alan Wake's price was revealed, I saw a lot of people in my feed saying, wow, Alan Wake is only $49.99. One of my mates was like, Jim, did you hear about Alan Wake's price? Like, the fact it was lower, people were talking about it. And they've got to move to this whole sliding scale thing because, like, I think the main reason Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy flopped is because, well, one, people thought it was a live service game, and two, the price. It was £70. It shouldn't have been £70. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, one of my favorite games from last year, that was £70. I think the initial sales were really great for that game, but I think in the long run, people weren't going to spend £70 on it. People looked at it and think. By the way, the podcasts you listen to and the people you listen to that defend the £70 thing, they all say the same thing. It's only £10 more, or it's only $10 more. It's not only $10 more. It's people saying, "I'll wait for a sale." Because guess what? You lose nothing by playing a game later. They always forget to mention that, by the way. You don't need to play every release the day it releases. You can play it a month later, 2 months later. Hell, over here, games tend to drop in price within like 2 weeks of release, so why not get the game then when it's cheaper? And I think going $49.99 is very fair. And for its, the game length, I think, why not? I'd rather have this like super high quality. Would Hellblade 2 really benefit from doing side quests, fetch quests? Like, that isn't Hellblade. Hellblade's a very scripted, linear experience where it's all about the whole. It's Senua's adventure and what's going through her mind and all that stuff. And it's like, you're not going to get that in an open world game that's 40, 50, 60 hours long. So I think it's fair, all that stuff. And I think people will love it. It's a change of pace because Microsoft, they tend to do big games now. So I think them having a linear game like this, it'll work in the long run. And personally, hearing that it was a shorter game actually made me more excited. Because I tell you, I don't have time for every game to be a massive open world title. I just don't. I'm playing Avatar this week, again. I'm getting back to it, and I know for a fact I'm maybe going to put like 100 hours into that, possibly more, and I'm loving the game, but it's like I don't want every game to be that long. I just don't. And also at the Xbox Developer Direct, they showed that Ara game. That's a real-time strategy game. It's a 4X strategy game. That's coming to PC only. It is what it is. I thought it looked cool, by the way. If they can put that on a console, I'll be there. Visions of Mana, like you said, looked great. Avowed looked amazing. People were complaining about the art style last summer when the gameplay was revealed. I think that game looks fantastic. It's an Obsidian RPG through and through. It has personality. The depth of combat is there. And one of my biggest problems with first-person, shall I say, fantasy combat is that you're either locked into melee or you're locked into magic or, archery. But in this, you can use wands, hand magic, you can use pistols and swords all on the fly, which I think looks fantastic. And, like, everyone, listen, you've probably played a first-person fantasy RPG. The gameplay isn't that good, right? The melee combat in first-person has never been good. But in this, it looked pretty good. Logan, what do you think of Avowed?
I really liked it. It got a big glow up, I think, from the last time. I think what threw people off at the beginning was like in the first reveal at the Game Awards years ago, it was kind of a dark trailer to begin with. Like the lighting was very dark, and like the vibes was kind of a little bit grittier. You're in this cave, and you see this Doctor Strange like hand signals making a glyph to fight this giant ogre troll thing in a cave, and it's like this medieval high fantasy, scroll pops up, and it's just like avowed. And so, okay, so like I've got this picture in my head, and then when they revealed it, like proper gameplay and stuff, people are like, wait a minute, this is way brighter and more colorful, and all this other stuff. This isn't what I expected. But I think now that they had that transition, and then on the third time they've shown it, it's like a glowed up version of what you saw a second time, plus it's more polished and, more in depth detail and showing the combat, the world, the lore, the characters, dialogue, etc. You're like, okay. It took me aback for a second, but I understand where they're going. This is to differentiate it from others in the genre. This feels like a true to scale Obsidian RPG, like Outer Worlds meets, high fantasy, essentially. And if you love Obsidian, you know what they're all about, their characters, their writing, choices, like being able to talk your way out of anything or being able to turn people against each other and the whole village goes up in flames because you convince the townsfolk to turn on each other instead. Just like all kinds of crazy stuff. The wand combat looks super fun. The hand signal combat looks fun. Swords, traditional medieval weaponry. Like, I'm in 100%. And that cover art, my
Yeah.
goodness. That is the cover art that set the internet on fire. Like, everybody's thirsting after this plant skeleton thing. And it will be a colossal ball drop if they don't make a steelbook and poster edition of that. Like, come on, Obsidian. Like, let please get that done.
Yeah, I'll do one even better, a 3D model collector's edition. Because
Oh man, that'd be awesome.
yeah, like that cover art. By the way, I think more people are talking about the cover art because I think a lot of cover art for games can be very mundane and it's the same thing over and over again. Like look at and I always go back to this. The cover of Bioshock Infinite. Bioshock Infinite is a beautiful, interesting game. And what's the cover? It's a dude holding a shotgun. That's it.
Super dull.
Yeah, super dull. And I think most game covers are kind of dull, but that it looked great. Um, they didn't mention it was digital only, so I think it'll have to get the steelbook treatment and all that. The good thing is it's going to be as long as Avowed or a little bit longer. The game's going to have multiple regions, so it's not one big open world like Skyrim. It's several different regions, and I'm all for that. I think hub-based RPGs are great too. The Outer Worlds, great game. And I think, that fits in the whole 30-hour RPG category. Like, yes, we need more of these. The game looks fantastic. Again, the thing that interests me most is the combat because I don't like being locked into a class. I think that's what was a big draw to me with Skyrim, is that I could use magic and a sword. And in this, you can basically use whatever you want, which I love. I'm getting sick of being locked into classes for games, but that won't be an issue in this. And it looks fantastic. And then the final game they showed was Indiana Jones. Now, the fact that this was shown off and being labeled as controversial blows my mind. So we'll get it out of the way. The game looks great. It showed the bad guy talking to Indiana Jones, the camera panned around. I think the graphics look great. People think it doesn't because it's not photorealistic. It's like, come on. Does every game need to have that gritty, realistic Unreal Engine 5 look? No, not all games need that. And like, look at the Wolfenstein games. Those are gorgeous games, but they're not photorealistic. Well, anyway, the game is a first-person action-adventure game with third-person cinematic moments and third-person cinematic cutscenes. I think the game looks phenomenal. You have Troy Baker doing the voice of Indiana Jones. I think he does a really good version of it. And what can I say? I'm sold. I think the game looks great. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, it releases later this year. Personally, I like the combination of first and third person. Deus Ex Human Revolution does the same thing. Logan, what was your take on the game? Because personally, I think the game looks amazing. It's now my most anticipated game.
On Indiana Jones, I'm floored. It looks incredible. It's like I tweeted about it after the thing. The highest praise I can give it is this is what I wanted Crystal Skulls to be. Like that's the vibe I'm getting from it. Like fits in the original timeline, trilogy timeline of in between Raiders of the Lost Ark, but before Last Crusade. And it's set in 1937. You're fighting the Nazis again. It's just and what better studio to do that than Machine
Yeah.
Games? They clearly have it down to an art form. So it just and I love the art style where it almost has this like watercolor kind of painted vibe to it, but also realistic. And like I thought that was Harrison Ford at first,
Yeah.
legitimately. Troy Baker has done a great job. And I mean like they're clearly not sparing any expense on this. They go and get one of the five most prominent voice actors, actresses in all of gaming, like to make sure they get this 100% right. And just the vibes, the villains just look perfect. You've got the this big hulking mysterious figure, that's gonna be like this tank that you have to deal with, that's like the henchman guy. And then you've got obviously the German army and their occult and their obsession with artifacts. You've got the blimps and then the combat, and it looks perfect. Like it's exactly what I'd want. And I feel justified in saying it would be both third person and first person because they, combat, exploration, everything, first person. Like you're embodying Indiana Jones. But when you're climbing or using the whip to swing and stuff, you're third person. So it's the best of both worlds. Everybody wins. And I think the whole motion sickness thing, we'll get to that in a minute, but I saw so many people flipping out saying it had to be third person because of Uncharted and Tomb Raider. I'm like y'all are dating yourself. You do remember what those were inspired by in the first place, right? Like Indiana Jones came out way before those were even a pipe dream. So the fact that you would have to model Indiana Jones after something that came after just to appease these people that are obsessed with a certain style of game, and then if it's not that, then it's going to cause problems is ridiculous. Like if you prefer a game in third person, cool, totally get it. But the idea that they would have to make it just like Uncharted or Tomb Raider is just hilarious.
Yeah, like if people have preferences over first person and third person, that like you said, that's fine. That is fine. Like I actually prefer third person, but most of the game I do play maybe 50-50. I still enjoy first person. All my favorite games are first person. I think, do you know, it's weird because everyone all of a sudden got motion sick with this game. GoldenEye, you're playing as Bond, first person. Metroid, you're playing as Samus, like first person. Like it's kind of crazy how all the people that have cried about Call of Duty exclusivity for the past year all of a sudden get motion sick with Indiana Jones. These people have been talking about VR for the past few years. All of a sudden get motion sick. And I don't know, like, why does, like, people are saying Indiana Jones had to be third person. Why? Like, It's not written on some ancient stone tablet that, oh, these games have to be in third person. Like, and if this was a third person action adventure game, and it was an Uncharted style game or Tomb Raider style game, the discourse would be about it being an Uncharted clone. They can't win. They literally can't win. Personally, I like the fact that they've gone this way because it's actually more unique. Like, if this was just another Uncharted game, every single review would be like, hey, have you played Uncharted? This is like Uncharted. The first person puzzle solving, the first person whip, like everything about it, like it screams Indiana Jones. The developers know what they're doing. And like the motion sickness thing, I'll tell you why it's BS, right? I suffer from motion sickness. I deal with motion sickness every single week. When I'm on a bus or a train or a car, I want to puke my guts up. I want to lie down, but I deal with it. And when it comes to like VR, like I actively can't use VR. Like that will set it off. I'm done. But like motion sickness of first person and third person games don't really make much sense because I used to get motion sick playing first person games. Like back when Mirror's Edge came out, I almost passed out playing the tutorial because in some first person games, and a lot of the older ones used to do this, where when you would walk or run, the camera would bob from side to side to simulate running. A lot of modern first-person shooters, a lot of modern first-person shooters don't do that. In fact, in games like Crysis 2 and onwards, you could actually turn that off. So the camera would be static when you move, which would make the motion sickness just all of a sudden not exist. And the crazy part is there's no difference between third-person and first-person. The only difference is that there's a character on the screen and slightly to the left. You're still looking at the same bloody image. The only difference is the field of view, and a lot of games now let you mess with the field of view. So everyone having motion sickness all of a sudden is the biggest pile of BS I've ever heard. That comes from someone that goes through motion sickness. So the game industry all of a sudden having motion sickness, I don't believe it. And a lot of people in my feed that are complaining about motion sickness have talked about Call of Duty nonstop. They are looking forward towards Concord this year. So which is it? Do you have motion sickness for some first-person games, or only the ones that suit the situation? And you have these companies putting out articles saying Indiana Jones is now controversial because of a fucking camera angle. I try not to swear on my channel, but bloody hell, the amount of hypocrisy I've seen this past week from not just the motion sickness thing, but the exclusivity thing. Let's move on to that. Indiana Jones was always going to be exclusive to Microsoft. It's their game. And immediately we have these outlets putting out these articles saying why Indiana Jones needs to be multi-platform and all this stuff. Yet every single time a third-party game is timed exclusive or forever exclusive on a PlayStation console, we get told to buy those consoles, buy the game on that console. And we've seen it from big media sites now, like IGN, GameSpot, all that crap. They all do this now. They all talk about, is this game going to be exclusive to Xbox? And this was the most annoying thing for me, that Microsoft, they've been in the console space for over 20 years now in the gaming media, and a lot of people act like Microsoft is still new to the industry and that they shouldn't have a place in the industry. There's people that I've followed for years, mutuals, that I've seen in the past few weeks saying, oh, it wouldn't bother me if Microsoft went third party. Do you know how stupid it would be if we just had Microsoft and Nintendo? Sorry, PlayStation and Nintendo, and it works both ways. You'd have all major AAA third-party games released on only one console. Console gamers would only have one option. And then people for years have been asking Microsoft, telling them, oh, we want you to do better. We want Microsoft to do better. And those same people, those same arsehots, those same podcasts that absolute hypocrites, and they know who they are, they have shown themselves. They've shown the true colours. Because I've heard a lot of people in the past year say that we don't need an Uncharted clone. We already have Tomb Raider. We already have Uncharted. But what are we going to do with Indiana Jones? And then they do something different, and apparently it's not enough. And then we want their games to be on multiple platforms when we don't get that talk for Spider-Man. Where's that talk? And we have these fake insiders, by the way, saying Indiana Jones is going to PlayStation because of a timed contract with Disney. No, that's not a thing. And by the way, Logan, you've probably seen this one. Indiana Jones has to also be on PlayStation because it's a license and they want the money. Last time I checked, Wolverine isn't owned by PlayStation. Am I correct?
You are correct. Marvel still owns full rights to that one.
So we see this back and forth, and I see in chat it's the Xbox tax thing. Like I don't like to mention the whole Xbox tax thing because like the people that don't see it at all refuse to see it. No matter how much evidence you show them, they'll come up with a million excuses. And even if you show them definitive proof of media outlets siding one way or the other, they will call you a fanboy just to exit the conversation. That is the truth about it. And Indiana Jones, Blade, all these games are proving themselves to be absolute hypocrites. Absolute hypocrites. And it's like Microsoft, for the first time ever, they have an active roadmap for their year ahead. They have games announced that's coming out this year. They have games that's coming later than this year that have already been announced. And people should be positive. But it's like, no, it's like we have to have another week of Xbox doom and gloom. Xbox going third party. And it's just this never-ending cycle, despite the fact that Microsoft have had a good week. You know? And honestly, as someone that's covered Xbox for years now, and I cover Xbox on Twitter, I'm honestly tired of it. I'm really tired of the discourse in the gaming space when it comes to the consoles because, like I said, Microsoft is treated like the newbie. They treat Microsoft like they haven't innovated in the console space. Like Microsoft, they made indies basically a thing on console popular. Multiplayer on consoles became a standard because of Microsoft on the online space. The online store for Microsoft in the console space innovated because remember what PSN was like back in the early PlayStation 3? Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Achievements were copied. Microsoft actually take care of their legacy titles, going back from the original Xbox to the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, all on Xbox Series consoles via backwards compatibility and have free upgrades. Microsoft doesn't charge for remasters. They put out free updates, and they still look down on by the media and by a lot of people because they are the newbie, despite the fact that Microsoft's only been in the console game, 6 years less than PlayStation? Like, that is nuts. And it's 2024, and people still do this. And then you have these multi-hundred, even if not million subscribed YouTube channels that they grew up on the PlayStation now. And this goes towards media outlets where they have journalists that are in between the age of 25 and 50 where a large portion of their gaming life was on PlayStation and they've never changed preference. Like I said earlier in the show, most Xbox gamers were actually PlayStation fans, and they just changed the preference. But most of these people in the media are still PlayStation fans. They've always been PlayStation fans. And any time there's a game, like Logan, you probably saw that clip from Easy Allies. One of the people that works there for a living, after Indiana Jones was shown off, literally said, "Oh, is this coming to PlayStation?"
Yeah, I saw that. That was like the video where Destin is trying to talk with his coworkers, and they're saying, the player count or whatever is dropped off on Starfield, which is a massive single player RPG and stuff like that. Like, it's like, come on now.
And it's like this never-ending cycle, and it's never getting any better. And I don't know, man. Like, just out of a show that was meant to be celebrated because it's a cool show where we saw new gameplay, we finally saw Indiana Jones gameplay after waiting 3 years, and we get that reaction. And it wasn't just about the motion sickness thing, but it's like, is this game exclusive, or is it forever exclusive? And it's tiring. It's tiring. And I'm sure gamers are sick of this as well because we can't have positive news just be positive news anymore. We have to have positive news spun into a major controversy for clicks. And like, motion sickness was trending in the UK. Motion sickness. Nobody talks about motion sickness when Call of Duty drops every year. Nobody talks about Call of Duty, or I should say motion sickness, when Battlefield or Halo or any other first-person game. but Microsoft gets a game that looks like it's going to be high in quality. It's a AAA action adventure game, and just because it's doing something different, people had to pick apart at it because it's first person. It's stupid. It's stupid. So we've learned this past week, Microsoft can't have any exclusives. It's not allowed. It should be illegal. And we've also learned that first person makes people sick only for specific games. It's tiring. It's absolutely tiring. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the whole Indiana Jones topic before we move on?
No, just basically that it it brought out all the San Fran blog boys that, just the ones that always have the opinions about how things should be and have always been and must always be in regards to process and their coverage, and like the same people that there's the Xbox tax thing comes from, like why that is a thing. It was them just showing out again, and it's embarrassing. People should stop, but they're not going to, so we just have to deal with it.
You mentioned like the game media and where they're from. I've noticed a lot of major game media outlets, they all act like, how should I put it, Borg drones. They all have the same opinion. They don't have individual opinions about anything. It's all the same one thing, and it's like that isn't healthy for any industry. Like, by the way, was it San Francisco or something like that in the US?
Oh, that was just the city I threw out because I know a lot of Silicon Valley and a lot of the big media conglomerates have headquarters in San Francisco, but then you've also got, DC and then New York and stuff. But for gaming in particular, San Fran is a major hub.
Well, San Francisco, all those media outlets, they all come across as like hippies. Like, not hippies, hipsters, that's the word, hipsters. And they're just like hive mind mentality and in the gaming space, and in fact, any space. I think that's just not healthy. It's not a healthy way of thinking. Like, you have these media outlets, but they'll have like an Xbox podcast where they'll talk about PlayStation, but they'll have a PlayStation podcast where it's just PlayStation. I don't know, it's weird. Before we close out the show, let's quickly talk about which I think you want to mention this, Logan. PlayStation going third party. Obviously, we don't mean that seriously, but what's been going on, because I've been very occupied.
Oh, basically, like similar to like some comments that Satya Nadella had made the other day to journalists when they were asked about future content plans with Activision Blizzard King and some of the other Xbox stuff. How he talked about how they want to be on more platforms, reach more people, yada yada, like typical PR spin, and like, oh, we want to reach this huge audience, and the more gamers we can reach, the better, and like the more devices obviously helps that, like that whole thing. PlayStation had their equivalent of that the other day, and it was just really funny how some fans ran with it and were like, see, PlayStation's going full third party, LOL, like, see, it's everybody's doing it. But then, like, it was just fascinating that certain outlets and publications and things, like, once again, the quote Xbox tax we hate talking about, like, where this comes out and there's hardly a peep about it or stuff written about it, or it's immediately dismissed as that's nonsense. This is what he clearly meant. Move along, find a new slant. Aren't the droids you're looking for? Versus when Xbox says or mentions anything that could be construed as something potentially, if you stretch it, there's doom and gloom articles and everybody's calling for the head of the company, like step down, retire, like just all kinds of crazy stuff. Just the double standard about how things are covered, like the infamous article about you can download videos or this is a pirate box now, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole like X companies going third party thing is way over the top. like Microsoft's committed before that they're gonna continue to make consoles. They're gonna invest in PC and console games, but also mobile. Like they've released mobile games before. Sony's the exact same way. Sony used to put games on PC. I should say they do put games on PC. They also used to put more games on streaming day one, and they also used to make more, mobile games. That's just where the gaming industry is going, because 15 years from now, 20 years from now, our game consoles are pretty much going to be an app, or you're just going to plug your phone into the TV, because that's where it's all going, like years from now. But these companies are making baby steps, and when it comes to like Microsoft and Sony, they are both going to release multi-platform games. That terrifies people when you mention some platforms, but like Xbox, Call of Duty, multi-platform. When it comes to PlayStation, Marathon is coming to Xbox. But you have, like you said, the media, people overreacting to just the Xbox side, and like not covering the PlayStation side the same way. It's very telling. And by the way, in my opinion, Microsoft and Sony, they're both going to be fine. They're both going to be fine. They're both going to release their exclusives still, and they're both also going to release multi-platform games. But I will say this: whoever releases a multi-platform game first, and this only applies really to Microsoft, there's going to be all hell to pay. People are going to lose it. You're going to have the whole doom and gloom crowd again. You're going to have people saying, "Oh, I'm done with Xbox," and then 4 months later, PlayStation will do the exact same thing, and no one will bat an eye. That's the reality of the situation. And I hate it's like that, by the way. I wish we could all just enjoy games and, realize, like, it's just video games. But the fact that we have these big media outlets, they do platform warring on just a different scale, and people don't realize it. Like the whole first person and third person thing. Let's be honest, that was a proxy war. A proxy for the console war, shall I say, because Microsoft has always invested money in putting out mainly first-person games, and Sony mainly does third-person games. So, by proxy, they can just mention third-person and first-person and have a war at each other, but they actually mean Microsoft and Sony. That's what they really mean. But yeah, it's a strange time. But anyway, it's going to be a good year for gaming. I think the negativity just got out of hand for that. And look, there's a lot of cool games coming to Xbox this year. It's going to be a great year. Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
One last thing. Turbo Overkill from Apogee Entertainment, who does a bunch of the modern boomer shooters, and they were involved in the original Max Paynes and Duke Nukems and stuff like that. That game, Turbo Overkill, which is like crazy, like you have a chainsaw arm and like all these crazy weapons, like cyborgs, monsters, super neon sci-fi mashup, crazy game, will be coming to consoles, and they will be having an announcement soon.
Nice. I know you like your boomer shooters, and those things seem to be getting really popular at the minute. But yeah, really cool stuff coming. And once again, Logan, it's been great talking to you, having you on the show. I think, as the year gets on, this is probably going to be one of the most interesting years in gaming, because 2023 was arguably one of the best years in gaming, and honestly, I think this year looks even better. So there's that. Now, a little update for the channel, because if you've been paying attention for the past few weeks, I burned my hand very badly. So editing videos and even running this podcast has been an absolute pain. Imagine trying to use your mouse with the left hand. I might as well be using my feet. It makes no sense. But anyway, the big video I was going to put out 2 weeks ago goes out tomorrow. And I'm actually putting out 2 videos between now and the next podcast. So finally being able to finish off some big projects. The big one is out tomorrow. Hope everyone enjoys that, shares it and all that stuff. Again, the algorithm could be better sometimes. But again, we'll be back next Tuesday. So once again, I should be having 2 videos dropping between now and next Tuesday. And by next Tuesday, we're likely going to have some pretty big gaming news. Again, January's been absolute backcrap crazy. Everyone in chat's been great. Thanks for the support, everyone. We'll be back next week. Everyone, please, have a good day. and stay warm out there. Peace, everybody.